The man across the table didn't blink. He read from a page as if it were a grocery list. You are no longer authorized to operate any system within this company. Celia, 14 words. No eye contact, no hesitation, just a cold sentence that ended 12 years of devotion in 49 seconds. They thought I'd leave quietly. What they didn't know was, those exact words triggered something I had buried deep in the system, something they couldn't undo. But this unraveling didn't start in that room. It started a week earlier with a glitch in Frankfurt that no one else noticed, but I couldn't ignore. It started with a blinking field in the Frankfurt logistics interface. Just one line of code, failing to validate a route confirmation. To most it would look like a hiccup, harmless, routine. But to me, it felt off. I leaned in. The timestamp was wrong by 3 milliseconds. The protocol used to flag the handoff wasn't the one I designed, and the routing table had a strange duplication pattern. Something that wouldn't just happen. Someone had touched the architecture. I rerouted access and checked the system logs. The modification came from Singapore. Not by accident, not by one of my team. It had been pushed through by a new admin credential I didn't recognize a name I'd never seen before. I should have been furious, but what I felt was something colder, duller, a slow crawl of suspicion beneath my skin. My name is Celia Thornwell. I'm the principal systems architect behind Kestrel Dynamics International Operations for 12 years. I've kept this company's 9-country supply chain breathing, optimizing routes, building disaster failovers, protecting vaccine deliveries during crises, even once rerouting PPE across oceans overnight. I'm not a face on a brochure. I'm the reason Kestrel runs on time. That system glitch, it wasn't just code to me. It was personal because the engine they tried to alter. Its name flashed quietly in the console. Centra.os. No one at Kestrel knows what that name means. They've never asked. But it was my sister's name, Centra. She died when I was 24. A shipping delay in our rural hospital meant her medication arrived too late. That moment didn't just break me, it forged me. I built the system to make sure no family in any country would ever wait in the dark, like I did, so when I saw that line of code, my code being altered by someone with new clearance, something clenched in me. I pulled up the authorization logs. The update had been approved, but not by me. Someone in leadership had quietly rerouted system control. And if they were confident enough to overwrite me, that meant something was already in motion. I sat back, in my chair, breathing slow. It wasn't the glitch that scared me. It was the fact that someone thought I wouldn't notice. He stood at the front of the operations briefing room on the 18th floor, Bryant Lister. Gray shirt, no tie, sleeves perfectly creased. His presentation slide read efficiency. Before legacy, he didn't smile, didn't ask for introductions. He just launched into bullet points about output ratios and margin increases. Not once did he mention the system that held all of it together. Not once did he meet my gaze. His mechanical cadence grated against every instinct I had. That day, I realized it wasn't just a new face, it was a new philosophy. A philosophy that measured everything and everyone by replaceable metrics. 2 days later, I was summoned to his office for a strategic sync. No small talk. He looked up, sliding a question across his laptop screen, as though testing a hypothesis. Without preamble, what would it take to rebuild what you built without you? I froze internally while keeping my voice even. That depends on what you're trying to build. He shrugged. Just theoretical. If we ever want to restructure, move parts offshore, make the platform more investor transparent. I nodded. You'd need more than a framework. You'd need context, alignment, institutional knowledge. He didn't seem to care. One word from him, and my 12 years of work reduced to a line item. Later that afternoon, back at my desk, I discovered 3 new administrator accounts in the core directory level for modification rights, equal to mine. One of them had pushed the Singapore patch. Rights that only I possessed until now. Whispers moved faster than emails in companies like this, and by 7, the halls were empty. I stayed late, checking logs, drafting a performance report I didn't intend to send. On my way out, at the shared HR printer, I noticed a confidential draft of Q4 restructuring candidates. My name, Thornwell Celia, A first on the list, marked red. Legacy architect. High salary, proprietary skill set, risk factor, if removed abruptly. Priority exit. The paper trembled in my hand. 12 years, distilled 2 numbers and red flags. I left it on the printer and walked out into the drizzle, under the awning. staring up at the glass facade where Centra still pulsed quietly and the back end still mine. At dawn the next morning, I returned to the office under cover of darkness. The server hum was a whisper behind the walls. I slipped into the console, bypassed the dashboards, and dove deep into the logic architecture only I had mapped. Root branches, the heartbeat of Centra. Something had changed. Not deletion, just subtle modifications. A function redefined a sequence delayed by milliseconds. An override script nested between two core verification steps. And a rewritten clause bypassing the emergency override failsafe for Frankfurt's transit node. It was elegant, but alien. Someone was trying to clean around the edges of a bomb without realizing it was live. I sat back. I wasn't angry. I was alert, because I knew what this meant. They weren't just replacing me, they were tampering with a system they didn't understand. In 2017, after a major cyberattack rocked our industry, our CEO asked me, "Can you build something that shuts us down before someone else can?" I wrote a single-line kill switch buried beneath 6 security layers, a natural language sensor keyed to one phrase. "You are no longer authorized to operate any system within this company." Celia, 14 words if spoken by an executive with the right cadence. It would fire a confirmation, awaiting my biometric override within 90 minutes. Fail that, and a country-by-country soft shutdown would ripple out like dominoes. And now, that clause was flagged for review by an unknown admin. Blister admin. My gut twisted. I checked the alias Bryant Lister. His record, Vero Logistics, network outage 5 years ago, caused by an insecure authentication module pushed under executive pressure. He'd tried to bury it. I'd quietly corrected it. Now he was back, rewriting my system. I backed up the current build, saved a copy of the untouched 2019 architecture, then logged out. In DevNosa, secure module only, I could access. I left one line. They're not just changing code. They're rewriting memory. Over coffee with Alan Baer, my legal advisor, I showed him the original Centra build lines timestamped 3 weeks before I joined Kestrel. "These are yours," he said. "Legally, if they repackage or sell without consent, you have grounds." His words should have comforted me, but they didn't. I'd built Centra to serve people, not to own it. Back in my office, Bryant's assistant slid a cream envelope across my desk. A disengagement package. 3-month severance NDAs, non-compete. "Consider it an elegant close," he said. I tucked it away, unsigned. That night, I re-examined logs. Layers of redundancy, conflict, mitigation, logic, real-time rerouting tools flagged as non-essential. Those were the heartbeats of the system, and they were cutting them for IPO optics. I poured a glass of wine I didn't touch, then booted my laptop. An internal email. "They're gutting your system for a fast IPO push. Ask about Singapore." Blunt. I opened the patch logs. Core protections marked for removal. They were hiding Singapore outages. They were rewriting my system to sell it. I almost signed the envelope. But I thought of a child in Jakarta whose cancer meds arrived latent. Centra rerouted through a storm. Of an old man in Morocco whose heart drugs made it on time. You don't amputate the brain of a system and expect it to live. And you don't silence its builder. I left the envelope unsigned, opened a blank file titled, "If they push, I pull." Then I went quiet. At 9 p.m., the office was dark, except for the server room glow. I logged in with master credentials still active, a mistake I'd planned to exploit. From my bag, I pulled an encrypted external drive. I accessed the last stable build, Centra.os ST 20209, and began copying routing protocols, emergency logic, verification tools file by file, layer by layer. When prompted to document each module, I filled everything except the domino clause, blank. A warning popped, incomplete documentation detected. I clicked proceed anyway. Then a secure comes ping from R. Calderon. Renee Calderon, former consultant. "Your biometric trigger is still active across all nodes." I typed confirmed. Tested from Singapore node this morning. They hadn't disabled me. They couldn't. My failsafe was still the only override key. I unplugged the drive, heart hammering not from fear, but resolve. They were pruning integrity. I wasn't going to stand idle. I left a hidden log entry. "If they want to break it, fine, but they'll break it with me still inside." Under rain, I slipped into the night. No alarms. No one noticed, but the system remembered. Singapore, Frankfurt, Nairobi, all lit faintly on the map. Not red, not yet, but flickering. They thought they were replacing a part. They had no idea they were tugging at the foundation. And the foundation remembers. The hum of the cafe's espresso machine felt distant now, like a heartbeat half a world away. I closed my laptop and tucked it back into its sleeve, the weight of unsent messages and unseen code pressing against my ribs. Outside, the rain had eased to a mist, washing the city's edges into a soft blur. I lingered, sipping the now cold coffee, its bitterness grounding me. The world carried on around me, conversations about weekend plans, arguments over pastries, the banal pulse of normality while beneath their feet. A carefully crafted web of routes and redundancies was beginning to fray. I stood, folded my coat, and stepped into the damp street. My phone buzzed again. Another alert from watch layer. 3 more nodes sliding toward instability. I paused under a street lamp and watched the droplets beat on its metal. The system I'd built was intercepting errors faster than they could propagate, but that only bought time. Each anomaly was like a warning crack in ice, and the next step would be collapse. I headed north, toward the old data lab in the basement of Kestrel's headquarters. It was past midnight, but using my legacy badge, the side door still clicked open. The terminal lights glowed faintly in the stale air. Inside, my watchdog script scrolled incident reports across the screen. Unauthorized logic rewrites, mass removal of diagnostic flags, time-stomp drifts creeping beyond tolerances. Whoever was orchestrating this had the board's blessing, but no respect for the architecture. I started drafting my next move. I couldn't simply pull the plug. Lighting off 9 countries could kill people. My kill switch was perfected. Centra would obediently unwind the network 1 country at a time. But I'd never intended to use it as a weapon. I needed to reshape the battlefield. I opened a secure console and began to deploy a shadow layer, my watch layer v2. It would isolate critical nodes, creating a virtual air gap whenever certain thresholds were passed. Singapore's repeat failures, Frankfurt's looping protocols, Sao Paulo's dispatch delays, they would trigger isolation. Quarantine that node until manual intervention. Severing the contagion of bad updates. Coding under dim light, I worked silently for hours. My fingers flew across the keys, each function tested in microseconds. By 3 a.m., V2 was live. A confirmation banner blinked. Quarantine protocols engaged. I exhaled, but knew it was only the first move in a longer chess game. At dawn, the city stirred. Reports of localized disruptions began filtering into public channels. A freight hub offline in Munich. A customs holdup in Johannesburg. A cargo manifest mismatch at Port Klang. Nothing traced back to MIT, all appeared as unintended side effects of routine maintenance. Perfect plausible deniability. I slipped home before sunrise and collapsed into bed, mind spinning. My phone lay beside me, dozens of unread messages, but I didn't open them. I needed rest before the inevitable next wave. When I woke, the first thing I saw was a headline on an industry blog: Kestrel Dynamics ops disrupted and coordinated. Failover error sources site misconfigured, military-grade security layers. Someone was sniffing the story, but they were miles off. I tapped the link. Speculation about an overzealous patch gone wrong. Wild theories of foreign cyber attackers probing weaknesses. No one suspected an internal architect defending her design. I checked watch layer v2 metrics. All 9 countries were still reachable, but 3 were in quarantine mode: Singapore, Frankfurt, Nairobi. It matched the alerts I'd seen. I leaned back and let the scope sink in. The board's cuts had already thinned the safety nets. Each quarantine was a reminder that they'd gutted what they didn't understand. A ping on my encrypted channel lit up the screen. Alan Bear. They're convening crisis talks. Rumors of emergency board meeting. Stand by. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I spent the morning drafting a white paper on the new layer's architecture flows. Quarantine logic, fail-safe realignments, complete with annotations and legacy design rationale. If they wanted my insight, I'd give it, on my terms. Late afternoon, an unexpected email from Renee Calderon. Saw your notes. They want to meet. Let me know when. I hesitated. She was the only person outside of Kestrel with both the clearance and the understanding to grasp what I'd built. Meeting with her could mean assembling allies or confirming I was alone. I replied, tomorrow, 8 a.m., same cafe. That evening, I wandered the empty halls of my former workspace. Lights off, monitors dark. It felt like walking through a morgue. I tapped my badge at the side door and descended to the data lab again. Watch layer V2 was stable. Quarantines. Holding, but I could see patterns. The rogue efficiency team was trying to reapply their updates through side channels. Rerouting around my quarantines. They'd split their payloads into micro-updates, hoping to slip past detection. I logged every source IP, every credential hash. By tomorrow, I'd know exactly who was pushing those changes. Back in my apartment, I reviewed the logs. 5 distinct accounts, all tied to one group. The Optimization Subcommittee. Names I recognize: team leads, project managers, junior admins. None were coders. None understood the system's soul. They'd been handed admin rights like candy, blind to the consequences. I drafted a new policy file. Emergency architect review required for all core logic edits. Signed, Celia Thornwell, Principal Systems Architect. I digitally notarized it in my personal repository. When the crisis team convened, I'd present it as an archival document proof that I had warned them, years ago, of the need for my bespoke oversight. If they refused, it would show deliberate negligence. Before bed, I placed a call to David in Nairobi. His voice was tight with gratitude and guilt. "Ma'am, they're asking me questions, saying it was my fault. I have the logs," I said. "I'll forward you the packet captures and override signatures. Stand by for the full report." "Thank you," he whispered. "No thanks needed," I replied. "Just keep the system alive." In the quiet that followed, I realized how far I'd come from that first glitch in Frankfurt. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was orchestrating the defense. And every move they made only tightened the knot around their own necks. Tomorrow, the board would gather. Bryant would posture about investor confidence. They'd ask for root credentials I no longer held. They'd plead for explanations of my quarantines, and I'd give them answers they couldn't swallow. Because protecting Centra wasn't about preserving my position, it was about preserving lives. And I'd rather watch their empire wobble than let a single vial of life-saving cargo slip through broken code. I shut off the lights and lay in the dark, listening to the city's hum. Somewhere in Singapore, in Frankfurt, in Nairobi, my watch layers pulsed silently, waiting for the next tremor. And I drifted to sleep with the knowledge that, for now, the system still remembered its maker. ChatGPT said, "The hum of the cafe's espresso machine felt distant, like a heartbeat half a world away." I closed my laptop and tucked it into its sleeve, the weight of unsent messages and unseen code pressing against my ribs. Outside, the rain had eased to a mist, washing the city's edges into a soft blur. My phone buzzed. Watch layer had flagged 3 more nodes sliding toward instability: Singapore, Frankfurt, Nairobi. Each tremor bought by the original quarantine protocols was a warning crack in the ice of global operations. I lingered under a street lamp, droplets beating on metal, thinking how close fragmented data streams were to tumble into chaos. After midnight, I slipped through the utility door of Kestrel's headquarters, badge still active on the legacy reader. The old data lab below welcomed me with stale air and faint terminal lights. On screen, incident reports scrolled, unauthorized logic rewrites, mass removals of diagnostic flags, timestamp drifts breaching tolerances. Their efficiency ops team had no clue what they were unraveling. I drafted the next move. Watch layer V2. Unlike the kill switch, this shadow layer would isolate critical nodes at the first sign of rogue updates, quarantining them in virtual air gaps until manual reconciliation. No more sweeping soft shutdowns. Targeted isolation would contain contagion without endangering lives. Fingers flew under dim lights as I sculpted quarantine routines and signature-based validations. Each function was stress-tested in microseconds. Each rollback path meticulously mapped. By 3 a.m., V2 was live, a confirmation banner blinking. Quarantine protocols engaged. I exhaled, knowing the fight had only begun. At dawn, news feeds showed localized disruptions: Munich freight hub offline, Johannesburg customs hold up, Port Klang manifest mismatches, all traced to routine maintenance failures. Perfect plausible deniability. I checked V2 metrics. 3 nodes quarantined, 6 still operational. It was enough to keep the global chain breathing, but the board's cuts had hollowed out too many safety nets. I spent the day consolidating log source IPs, credential hashes, update payload signatures, all traced to the Optimization Subcommittee. NaN coders with admin rights, blind to the system's soul. I drafted an emergency architect review policy, digitally notarized it in my personal repository. If the crisis team demanded answers, I'd prove I'd warned them. Late afternoon, Renee Calderon pinged on the secure channel. Saw your notes. They want to meet. Only she could grasp the architecture's depth. I replied, tomorrow, Shamu Badian, same cafe. Then I called David in Nairobi. He was under pressure, accused of the vaccine delay. I have the logs, I told him. Stand by for the full packet capture. That night, I wandered the silent halls of my old workspace, monitors dark, corridors empty like a mausoleum for my legacy. In my apartment, I reviewed quarantine metrics one last time, the fraying nodes, the containment success, and the creeping attempts to bypass my safeguards through micro-updates. I closed my eyes against the city's first light, preparing for the board's emergency meeting. Bryant would posture about investor confidence. Legal would demand root credentials I no longer held. They'd plead for explanations of quarantines and I'd deliver them on my terms. Because preserving Centra meant preserving lives, and I would let nothing break its heartbeat.